Welcome back to FreightWaves Now on this Wednesday morning. We're going to welcome in next Trucking's head of communications, Mike Bush, to talk a little bit about what's going on with shippers and having to deal with the independent contractor rules. Mike, thank you for joining us this morning. Great to have you as always.
Good to see you, Anthony.
Let's dig into this a little bit because we talk a lot about how independent trucking regulations like the AB5 regulations in California are going to impact your independent owner-operator drivers, your carrier fleets, but we haven't really talked a whole lot about it on the shipper side of things. Can you give us a little bit of perspective on that side about what we can see from some regulation impacts?
Yeah, Kaylee, we're about to see a really interesting time for shippers, and it's in no small part, as FreightWaves has been predicting, due to the fact that we're going to see a lot of capacity come out of the marketplace. And I know that theoretically, when we're in a down market, it could be a good news to see less capacity. Therefore, we're going to right-size the amount of capacity that's available for shippers. But there's another challenge here, and there's actually a couple of different challenges. The first one, of course, is AB5, and we're going to see, some carriers are going to make the decision to shut their doors and not operate anymore, as opposed to trying to continue their truck or continue driving their truck or becoming an employee. The second thing to be aware of is the clean air requirements. And certainly when you look at CARB, I don't think anybody can be against clean air. But I think the challenge that you're running into is if we look at the end of this year, on January 1st of this year, 1 out of every 5 trucks that are eligible to go into the ports of LA Long Beach are no longer going to be eligible. So what you've got happening is a situation where many small independent owner operators or many small trucking companies need to be investing in newer trucks at the same time the market has crashed. So we're going to see a crash in capacity. Right at the same time, shippers are starting to go through their RFP process, looking around to say, okay, I need to find new truckers.
And Mike, as we continue to look forward to this, and like you said, there's definitely a shift happening right now and continuing to happen within the market. What are going to be some of the main strategies that you see really some of these shippers kind of take hold? Do you see any kind of big overwhelming trends happening within the marketplace, or do you think each one's going to have a little bit of a separate or different take?
Anthony, I think every shipper has to take their own approach and really identify the right strategy for themselves. As we all know, 90% of trucks on the road are part of a small fleet. So if you're a large shipper who says, I only want to work with asset-based carriers, that's going to be a real challenge. There just simply aren't going to be enough asset-based carriers around. Then the follow-on item is, and this is actually critical in sort of this third regulation. So we've talked about AB5, we've talked about CARB. There's a third regulation that's not getting quite as much attention right now, and it has to do with the C.H. Robinson lawsuit, where Robinson was told they can be held liable for an accident that they've brokered out. So basically the question is C.H. Robinson as a shipper doing the right things to identify quality truckers and make sure that the loads that they're carrying are going to safe drivers? This is as we're cutting capacity out of the marketplace, we're now talking about also looking to identify great carriers. So if you're a shipper, you've got this double-edged sword to say there's going to be less truckers available, but I need to find the best of the best. And whether that's switching to asset-based and then eventually, potentially seeing rates start to climb because there's only so many asset-based carriers, or looking for brokers who have really robust, really aggressive vetting and, kind of ongoing maintenance of the relationships they've got with their truckers, it's going to be a really interesting time as a shipper just to de-risk what you're looking at, make sure you've got redundancy, and also potentially keep yourself out of the court.
I think it's going to be just an absolute crazy time for shippers, for carriers, for independent owner-operators to handle what's going on and to be able to simultaneously juggle this. And obviously, you might need a couple more team members to be able to handle and juggle this as well. Do you think that looking at maybe hiring on some specific folks who put a focus on maybe only dealing with, like, say, if you're a national company and you work in California often, say somebody who is solely responsible for dealing with California just because it's going to be so difficult to handle all of those moving parts?
I'm not sure that that's the case, Kaylee. It's a great call out, but if you look at what the Biden administration is pushing with the PRO Act, what we're seeing in California is theoretically the tip of the spear, right? If the PRO Act goes through as it's written, you're going to see the same questions about owner-operators and independent owner-operators across the country. This creates a whole different set of circumstances, but it's on a nationwide scale, but it is the same thing that folks that are aggressively moving goods in California are already operating with. So So I would actually say if you're a national company with, lots of presence in California, there's probably no harm in looking at how your transportation leaders are handling California and starting to mirror that playbook as we roll out new regulations across the U.S.
And Mike, how much of a possibility is it for some businesses just to kind of shutter operations in California, to say, hey, you know what, this is just too much, I'm going to kind of look elsewhere? Is California just too big of a market for that to happen, or is this a true possibility for some companies?
I think it's a true possibility for some companies, but it requires a massive shift in the way they operate, right? When you think about like the way America is set up, we are built to move goods from west to east. We are built to accept goods coming out of various components of various countries in Asia and push them eastward. As we've seen, and if you look at congestion in Savannah right now or congestion in New York, LA and Long Beach are set up to handle, 15, 20, 30 ships, 30 vessels at a time, whereas some of these other ports are, haven't grown that much. And I think when you look at just the sheer scale and the number of cranes available in LA Long Beach versus one of these other large ports, it's just a different animal. I think LA Long Beach is going to have to remain sort of a hub just based on the fact that it's the only port in America capable of handling the volumes that are coming through it.
Mike, kind of piggybacking off of Anthony's question, I asked this to our investigative reporter, Clarissa Hawes, on Monday, and she writes a lot about bankruptcies, companies going out of business, and she's put, of course, the focus on California now as we're seeing some of the smaller companies go out. But I asked her if we think that we could see some of these larger companies operating in California taking this now as an opportunity for some M&A activity. Maybe, they're seeing there and they say, hey, we have the resources to adjust our operating strategy, and why don't we absorb some of these smaller companies who may be going out of business anyways, say, hey, we'll throw you some money, sell to us, sell us your assets if you need it, give us your employees if you have them. Do you think that could be the case going on later now as well?
Oh, 100%. I think, nobody wants to let a good crisis go to waste, right? There's a tremendous opportunity for M&A to look around at distressed assets, especially in California, but also across the country. To the point that FreightWaves has been predicting for a while, we are seeing the bottom drop. We're seeing rates hit incredibly low. And, when that happens, it's the larger fleets that tend to accept these sort of low rates to say, I want to maintain my drivers. And it is the smaller companies that tend to get pushed out. Certainly that's happening in California, but it's happening across the U.S. as well.
And Mike, before we let you go, where can people find you? How can people get in touch with you or learn more about Next Trucking?
Sure. So it's nexttrucking.com. You can find me on Twitter at Mike Bush, or just look around for the guy with the large man bun at F3 next week.
All right, Mike, we're excited to see you. I've been asking this of everybody who's saying that they're coming to F3. What are you most excited about for the event?
I'm excited about the energy. There are lots of trade shows and lots of events that bring together shippers to kind of say, here's what I've built, check it out, take a sales opportunity. Whereas I feel like the FreightWaves community is far more let's build together and far more collaborative. So I think the opportunities to be in the same place, put our heads together and solve some real issues is the most exciting thing about the show.
Awesome, Mike. Well, we will see you next week right here in Freight Alley. Take care, safe travels, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks so much.